Welcome to Racism is Real, where we tackle the urgent realities of racism in our society. In this series, we explore the systems of oppression that continue to harm marginalized communities and the movements working to create change. Through powerful conversations with activists, educators, and thought leaders, we aim to uncover the truth and take steps towards justice.
Hello and welcome to the Racism is Real series. Today we have joining us Chantel and Aluchi. Please introduce yourselves and how you would like to be addressed.
Okay, sure. I'll go first. Hi, I'm Chantel, they, she pronouns, heavy on the they. I am a member of the Racial Justice Anti-Racism Training Collective and have been for quite some time. I'm also the founder and convener for Blackwood Rising, a healing and wellness space centering the flourishing of Black, queer, and trans people and the community that loves them, and based in Philadelphia. And I'll kick it over to my friend Aluchi. Aluchi, we cannot hear you, unfortunately.
All right, hey y'all. I hope this is better. I hope you can hear me. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Hey y'all. My name is Aluchi. I use any pronouns. Chantel, they did not name, but they're also on the steering committee of the organization that I am the co-director of, which is the Black LGBTQIA+ Migrant Project. That is a lot, so we just say BLMP. We're an organization that's based in the United States that works with queer and trans Black migrants and first-generation people to ensure the liberation of all people. We do that through being a member-informed and member-centered organization that has both local and national hubs here in the United States. And we do a whole bunch more, which I'll definitely get into and talk about as we move through this podcast.
Well, hello guys. I'm so excited to meet you and I'm excited to get into this. Before I start, hi, I'm your host, Olivia Payton, but I go by Payton. I am a current student at Spelman College, graduating next semester, early, might I add. I'm currently a comparative women's studies major, which for those of you who don't know, simply means I study activism, I enforce it, and I live through it. I am so excited to be deep diving into all the things, but most specifically, intersectionality, racism, gender, and sexuality.
Whew.
I know, quite a bit there. All right, let's get into it. So first things first, I want to warm the energy up and just make sure everybody's feeling alive and well in spirit and energy. And ask something that I feel like people don't necessarily talk about. And if you guys can define it in your answer, that'd be really helpful. But my first question to you guys is, how does intersectionality help us understand the complexities of racism in combination with other identities? Yeah,
Just
pretty loaded.
This is the warm-up question.
Yeah, we have a lot more coming.
Like, what's your favorite Pride activity?
Literally.
Happy Pride.
Yes,
that's what I need. I need like a low bar, like a Pride kind of question, like what you doing for Pride this year?
Okay, you know what? Let me toss this at you. My favorite question to ask people is, if you were an ice cream flavor, what flavor would you be?
Ooh,
Yeah.
that is so good.
It's deep.
It's so good. Okay, I already have mine. Aluchi, do you have yours?
I could probably figure something.
You make something up.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, thank you. This is a good warm-up question, Peyton. If I was an ice cream flavor, I would be cookies and cream ice cream. Because it's a classic. It doesn't do too much, but it kind of hits all the things that you need. It's got the crunch of the cookie, staple of vanilla, and you can always dress it up or dress it down. It's good in a milkshake. She does a lot of stuff for you. So I'd be cookies and cream. What about you, Aluchi?
So
Rum raisin.
Wow. So, like, back when you used to get the ice cream on the truck and there was the Powerpuff Girls with the gumball eyes?
Yes.
Yeah, I always got Buttercup.
It would be that, because it is doing a lot. It is doing too much, but you can't deny how good it is. Like, you can't eat them every day. Like, it's a little too much to have every day, but you need it at least once in your life. And if that was not a Leo, then I don't know. I guess I'm not a Leo.
You're right.
I don't know what's Leo.
That's good. That's good. I love that. I think I would be mint chocolate chip. Because I feel like I'm bold, I'm a lot, and it's not for everybody. And I don't need it because it's for the people it's for. And they ride for it. Mint chip lovers, they ride for theirs. So
they do. They do. I have one of those in my house.
I feel like that's the energy. Okay, now that we've warmed up, are we feeling good? Are we feeling
Yes, back to the intersectionality.
Okay, yeah. The complex intersection. I'm not playing. But again, the question at hand is, how does intersectionality help us understand the complexities of racism in combination with other identities? So to soften this up a little bit, first things first, let's talk about intersectionality, right? And what that means to you. I'm going to throw out a definition of just for the blanket statement of conversation. Intersectionality, as I think we'll be using it today, is the understanding of different and multi-layered forms of abuse of power and oppressions on one person. So for example, you could be Black, you also could be a woman, you could be queer. Individually, those are all things you might be facing in a patriarchal oppressive system. However, in combination with each other, they oftentimes make things harder to live. They make things harder to experience life through. And in general, it is a multi-layered stack in the way the patriarchy would be oppressing you.
Yeah.
That was a lot, guys. That was a lot. I know, but I wanted to give,
That's it. You said it. You defined it. So I don't think we have to redefine it again. I will just say, in my lived experience, like when I learned about the work of Kimberly Crenshaw, who coined intersectionality, it felt like a moment of being made visible, my lived experience. Because I think for so long, people wanted me to choose between different facets of my identity as like which one really shapes my lived experience and how I navigate the world and presents challenges, but also blessings, and where do I find my comfort in. And I just was like, I always felt like I had to diminish some part of me in gendered spaces and racialized spaces, but yet so much of my the way I experience even my racialized identity is gendered, and it is through my sexuality. And even when I came out, I felt like it was about making the picture whole instead of fragmenting. And I think intersectionality helped me resist fragmentation in a way that invited my whole humanity. So I think that's why it's really important, not just because we can look at the ways oppression acts on different, realities or identities. I don't know, Lucci, if you have like some real, come on, give it to us deep.
Yeah, I think it's interesting for me because like, even growing up, as a kid, growing up in a household that was shaped by immigration very directly, like racism was always different than what I learned in school, right? Like racism was for people who were descendants of slaves. Like racism was for like folks that like had ancestors through the transatlantic slave trade, both in school, but then also there was a very real division that my parents kind of ensued in us based on anti-Blackness at the end of the day, that we were different than the Black people that were in America, right? I remember growing up that the thing that they would love to say was, you're not Black, you're African. And I think for me, that made me have a different relationship to my Blackness than someone who was a descendant of a slave. And I think even moving forward, when I came out, I remember being forced out of the closet, happy Pride, but that's not something that we do, that's a white thing, right? And I think that detached my sense of my own race and how I was perceived, because I couldn't be both queer and Black or queer and Nigerian, or I couldn't be trans and Nigerian. And I think that also then shaped how I saw my own liberation and how I wanted to fight for the lives of myself and the folks that are coming after me. And for me, I've really understood that it's not even just one of these identities, but all of my identities are shaped by white supremacy, patriarchy, and capitalism. And intersectionality defines and explains why that exists, right? It defines why Black women are always never actually seen as women because they're hypermasculinized. It defines why Black men who might be more effeminate or might not be as masculine are seen as gay because Black men are supposed to be brutes. They're supposed to be hypermasculine. They're not supposed to be heard. They're only supposed to be seen. And so for me, intersectionality really defines, one, how even my parents have fallen down the trap of white supremacy, and also other African immigrants and migrants just in general. And also it defines how we then police each other to be like a little bit above, right? Or like how Black men put down Black women to be a little bit above or closer to whiteness or closer to this idea that they need to be, that has been shaped by the ways that we've been oppressed. And it also gives me a roadmap about who do we center in this time, and also who are we listening to actually get the answers towards our liberation.
Yeah, that's really good. That was a lot of wonderful things, and a lot of truths. I think some of the things I was hearing in the conversation was the idea that intersectionality is, it affects all of us in very vastly different ways. But the one thing that is to be true is you don't get to hide your intersectionality at all times. And I think specifically when we look at people of color and when we look at people who are seen automatically in society as kind of these villains, these people who are predators, these people who are attackers, regardless if that's the truth of what we're wearing on the outside, I think about a lot of the idea. I was recently talking about this with my girlfriend, and we were talking about pride. And I said, I hate pride. And everybody looked at me and they were like, record scratch, what? I said, I really do. Because when I go to Pride, it's a white space. And when I walk in there, there's going to be somebody who's afraid of me because I'm Black. And she said, but it's Pride. You know what I mean? Like everybody gets to be outside. And I said, yeah, if you're not seen as somebody who's dangerous, I don't get to decide that my skin tone is not going to be my skin tone today and that I'm just going to change it tomorrow. That's not something I get to choose. So intersectionality for me reminds me of not just the battle scars, but the journey to get them and the things that we have to see every day and experience. Which kind of brings me, I know you guys were bridging it into my next kind of conversational question, but as I was thinking about this, I was, first things first, pause. I want to make sure we give time and energy to the comments and to the people who have comments. So I'm going to turn them over. Yes.
So where are you seeing comments at? Okay, let me.
It's on like the screen. No, it isn't just race, gender, or sexuality. It's not just these things that we have named in the conversation. It's also social hierarchy. It's also what Audre Lorde defines as the mythical norm, which is, if you are rich, white, male, Christian, all these things come into play in these conversations. And if you do not subscribe to that, you oftentimes do face this intersectionality. And even more so as we are going in, we are wondering specifically the unique challenges that we might face as Black women, as Black men, as Black people, a part of the LGBTQIA plus community, but also in general, what people of color may face within anti-racism movements. And to even more like deeper dive into that, I would love to like pick your brain about how specifically within this movement, we as individuals who all identify a part of these communities are experiencing challenges that go unnamed, that go unspoken, that go undocumented, because that happens a lot in our line of work.
Yeah, before I answer that question, I just wanted to reflect and speak back to you something that I heard around like not wanting to go to Pride because it's a white space. I think I feel a lot of sadness because like Pride wouldn't exist without Black trans
women.
That's hard. That's hard.
She laid the groundwork.
Without the trans women of color who were to the point. I want the question to come back up, but like trans women of color who quite literally were pushed out of the larger LGBTQ movement because they were too radical, right? Like in the 60s, when we were thinking about what was happening, when we were thinking about even the AIDS epidemic, and when we think about like the protests that were happening, that was happening in tandem while there was a large assimilation majority of specifically white lesbian women and gay men that were pushing this idea that, hey, we just want to be accepted by whiteness. We just want to be accepted. Like, we're the same as you, other than we just love who we love. Yeah. We don't even want to like dress differently. We see ourselves as women, which right now we're seeing as folks like J.K. Rowling or trans exclusionary radical feminists, which you can't really be a radical feminist and be trans exclusionary. Like, that is how this is showing up in this time, is that we are seeing that trans people of color, we're seeing Black people pushed out of movements because that's how we lost. There is a narrative around the 2024 election that the reason why Democrats lost is because we have been pushing the quote unquote trans agenda, right? And so I reflect a lot about, I'm originally from Minnesota, and in 2020 during the uprisings, the organization that I also founded as well as BLMP was in the center of the global uprising that was happening. And I remember even inside of spaces that I had been organizing with people for years, there was mistrust in our leadership because we were all Black trans and Black queer and trans people. It was, this is not a Black queer trans issue. This is not a Black queer issue. Why are these people leading what is going on in Minneapolis? Our leadership and our Blackness was stripped from us because of the ways in which we talked about the liberation in an intersectional way. We were not trusted to move work because it was, oh, y'all are just pushing the queer issues and that's why people are fucking with it. Or the constant erasure of the people that are doing the most work.
Right. This is like which is what I think it's as American as anything else, is because I think about like Bayard Rustin, who literally carries the Black, like makes the whole march happen.
The organizer of the march on Washington.
He's the one in closed doors, Martin's out the front, but he's in the back making sure there's, we got access to bathrooms and also the women in the movement who fed the movement, like day laborers, house cleaners who were taking meals from the houses or cooking food and feeding people in the movement for Black liberation. And this is a constant theme of people who are seen as divergent or non-normative to white supremacy and are not palatable or too radical getting pushed out of these spaces because, so it's almost like you have to fight, you're fighting alongside of people, but when it's time to have to sacrifice somebody for the greater good, right? They're like, you're gonna have to be the one to be sacrificed.
Yes. And you know what? To that point and to what you guys were saying, I think we started, bringing up unnamed voices. We also don't talk about Coretta Scott King and her work for LGBTQIA+ rights. She was an avid champion of LGBTQIA+ rights, and the only reason that we had this this resurgence where we kind of learned what the work she was doing because she didn't want the credit for it. She didn't want to be in the papers for it. The only reason we started to figure this out was because LGBTQI+ individuals started naming her. And I think it goes back to the question at hand. One of the challenges that we face is that as Black, trans, as LGBTQIA+ women and people, we oftentimes do not get the credit that we deserve. We don't get named in these movements. Our voices are railroaded, they're overturned. And oftentimes the biggest thing that I think people don't understand is I could be yelling from the rooftop, but as soon as somebody who's next to me, who's fair-skinned and a little bit more presentable starts talking, you'll shut up to hear her speak. And that's the problem. I could have a degree and exactly what we're talking about, but as soon as somebody else who is more palatable to you shows up, that's who we want in charge. And that's the problem. And I think that in the name of the challenges we're facing in anti-racism movements, number one, we're facing our voices being marginalized and not heard. And I think the other thing that I really hear you guys speaking about is that even when we are uniting, The diaspora is not united on this one, right? So we
Mhm.
have this kind of separation amongst the diaspora on these issues. And then even more so, the LGBTQIA plus community is not united. Because at the end of the day, and hot take, y'all, please don't come for me. Unpopular opinion, hot take, you will weaponize your whiteness as soon as the going gets tough.
Mhm.
But if I'm outside every day fighting, excuse me, if I'm outside doing the work that I need to do, you know, being like Marsha P. Johnson, being one of the revolutionaries, her name rarely gets brought up. But we constantly talk about, you know, these white leaders who have helped us, no doubt, but almost all of them got their inspiration from a black woman or a
Oh
trans.
yes, I mean, come on. That's why you gotta be careful how you drop your stuff on the internet, as we do everything on the internet these days. It's because like it's just so easy for things to be they'd be Columbusing, you know, they'd be discovering things out of the vacuum. And I do think that if we're not careful, kind of what Aluchi was saying, like we have to be really clear about whose voice we're centering and who we're listening to and who we're allowing to shape movement spaces. And it can't be the one that's the most palatable to those in power, because
Yeah.
then we can kind of already assume that's not it. That's not going to be the thing that's really going to help us get free, all of us free. And I think part of why our movements fail is because we're willing to sacrifice people that we believe are expendable, and also we're willing to settle for something short of less than complete liberation for all people. So I think
So,
until we get serious about that.
let me ask you a question. I specifically I want to hear you too, Aluchi, on this one. But off of that note, what do you think we can do to ensure that anti-racism work is inclusive of all marginalized identities? Because we're talking about, you know, our voices not being represented, not being heard. We're talking about the fact that we are building our own table at this point. So what do we do as leaders, you know, as future trailblazers, as people who want to see some change? How do we make sure we're inclusive of everyone? And how do we make sure we are not talking over, you know?
Mm. Yeah, I appreciate you bringing up a table. Um, if folks want to do some homework and also support a dear comrade, there's a book called Unapologetic that's made by Charlene Carruthers.
Mhm.
I think the whole title of the book is Unapologetic, like a Black queer feminist mandate for
Keep
radical
going. You're
movement.
doing good. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. And so one of the things that Charlene, shout out to the Leo, Charlene loves and coins is whenever you are at a table, you always have to ask yourself who is not at the table and why. And
Yeah.
so, like, even when we think about and we talk about even this podcast, right? Like, are we talking about neurodivergency? You know, I'm neurodivergent in the ADHD way, but are we talking about folks that are differently abled? Are we talking about folks that are like are asylum seekers or refugees or have underdocumented or undocumented status? Are we talking about people that have survived or are recent survivors of some type of state sanctioned violence? Are we talking about folks that are recently incarcerated or previously incarcerated? And so for me, the mandate has always been, yes, I am at the table as someone who is a Black, queer, trans, medically trans person, and also who is not here in my steed, and how do I bring them here the next time that I come to the table? Because the only way that we are going to get free is if the most marginalized person is free. And I know we talk about that within intersectionality, but that means bringing them to the table to also fight for their own solutions.
Yeah, I do think that we have to really get comfortable with naming that people are missing from the conversation and not getting stuck into, not being seduced into trying to think that we can be the one that speaks for every single in any kind of way with authenticity and authority for identities that we do not hold. And also, yeah, widening the table. I think the idea that there's limited seats is just it's just like a myth. It's mythology. I think we can make the table wider. And instead of, I think along with asking, you know, who's not here and why are they here, it's also like, whose table is this? Like, whose table is this even? And if it's a table that's for the collective liberation, I think that we need to ask about, like, we need to make this table wider. We need to make this table do different things. Maybe we got to flip this table. And I think getting so fixated on making sure that we're at the table so that we get ours is really playing into like the hierarchy and the power, I think like the power games that white supremacy wants us to be engaged in. I know there's a question in the chat, so I don't know, Peyton, if
Yeah.
you want to.
I was going to say, can we go ahead and turn it over to the question?
Yeah.
The question reads, is there room to make mistakes? As I grow from a limited into a wider perspective, what are ways that I can grow in a way that isn't demonized? Basically, how can I be an ally who's educated?
I appreciate that question because, like, I didn't hop out the womb politicized. James Baldwin didn't hop out the womb politicized. Like, the growth is the medicine of liberation and transformation. Like, I don't know, I like the cat.
No, I was like, okay.
I think for me, it is, who are you around that's going to hold you accountable with love and grace? And if they're not doing that, they are not living within their value of liberation, in my opinion. That's my opinion.
That's so good.
Right? Like, I think, like, obviously, if it's something that you are continually, repeatedly causing harm to, there needs to be some type of escalation of accountability. And also, like, I don't envision a world without harm. I envision a world in which harm doesn't cause more harm, right? And we're able to transform that harm into something generative and in something that will bring peace to the folks that are involved in that conflict. Yeah. So I'll just stop there and I'll see what Chantal has to say.
I mean, yeah, I mean, exactly. Like, I think, can we have a world in which we can practice actively making repair and making amends and learning our lessons? I think there's people that are committed to ignorance, but I think the vast majority of people want to be moved. They want to show up. And I think taking responsibility for that means that you find your learning circles and you find the groups that the education you need to do, but also how can you be in conversations and in dialogue with each other in ways that allows for mutuality and transformation. And that takes a lot of humility and being willing to say, there's some things I don't know. There's many times I'm going to get it wrong, but we have a commitment to repair and we have a commitment to co-liberation. And so that's what we're going to be about. So that's what I would recommend.
No, you're good. I think that was okay. So another comment, I'm going to read it out loud. In addition to the previous comment, we have to understand that allyship does not stop solely because the ally is marginalized. There should be allyship within marginalized communities as well. And I think that's 100% right. We need to also unite as one when we look at not comparing apples to oranges, not comparing, well, I have this lived experience and you have this one. I think about womanism and feminism a lot, where womanism is specifically created because Black women didn't really feel safe within feminism because it became white feminism. But the first thing that womanism claims in their definition is that to be a womanist is to be a feminist. It's encompassing these different ideologies. And I specifically think, and I want to shout out, I think about Dr. Beverly Guy-Shiftal's and her story. She created the Comparative Women's Studies at Spelman, but one of the things she said was when she was younger and going to Spelman, bell hooks didn't have a place to stay. And so she said, well, you can stay on my dorm floor if you want to stay there. I'll sleep on the floor. You can sleep on the bed. And that's one of the ways that we had access to bell hooks' thoughts, to her diaries, to her spoken word. And she's one of the biggest revolutionaries we have in literature speaking on these things. I think it's as simple as saying, I'll offer you up my floor. I think it's as simple as kind of just saying, I see you, I'm meeting you, I'm giving to you, and not asking any questions. With that being said, this was so amazing to have you guys on here. We talked about a lot of things. We talked about some heavy things. We talked about some light things. We threw some names at you guys. And I hope all of it is taken with love, abundance, and energy. But I wanted to give a chance for our panelists to say goodbye and give themselves, a chance to plug and to make sure that, our viewers are able to contact them if need be. So I'll pass it over.
Yeah, as I'm having some light issues in here, like a light keeps going out. Anyways, Chantel, part of the Racial Justice Collective, but also Blackbird Rising. You can find us on Instagram and our website. We'd love to connect with you further. And I'll pass it to Lucci.
Yeah, don't find me online, but BLMP is on the screen.
Yes.
Y'all
Find BLMP on the screen.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you
Thank you,
guys so
Peyton.
much. Yes,
y'all.
I'm so happy this was my first time doing something like this, and it was really
You did
fun.
good.
I'm so happy to be doing this. I hope that I get to do some more research. You know, my work is on Black girl activism and justice, so I'm excited to be talking to you guys and to be in contact and have that community. Thank you guys, and we have a
This
quick
is the start
outro.
of my podcast career. I'm gonna be a podcast nigga nowadays.
Come on, what? And I'm subscribing. What now?
Nice. Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
That's all for today's conversation on Racism is Real. Thank you to our incredible guests for sharing their insights, and thank you for tuning in. Remember, awareness is the first step, but action is where the change happens. If you found today's discussion valuable, this series will return every second Tuesday evening. Also, be sure to check out our website and follow us for more information and topics like these. And consider making a donation to support our work. Together, we can challenge systems of oppression and work toward a more just future. See you next time.